Hi, this is Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. So, it's week 2 in the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group, and that means the prompt for this week is recycle, repurpose, reuse, or use your scraps. And, I've just pulled out a whole load of scraps again. Not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I feel like I've been using a lot of scraps in projects recently, but it is something that I really, really enjoy doing. The kind of way I make art, I also create a lot of scraps at the same time, and so this for me is a good way to use them up. So I'm going to work a wee bit intuitively today because, as I say, I'm not entirely certain what I want to do. I did look out my folder that has product tags in it, clothing tags, that type of thing. I don't know if I'll use them, or I've got a piece of caddy paper here. I must have used it just to, brayer off. That looks like spray of some description. I might use it. I honestly don't know, but we'll just see where the project takes us. And I will, of course, swap to editing mode just now and probably have to put some of this on at speed. But today, it's Saturday morning. It's quite windy and blustery outside. The sun keeps coming in and out. There's rain forecast. But I'm just in the mood for taking things quite slowly and just enjoying the process. Thanks ever so much to everybody who commented on my image transfer video last week, and those of you who said it was actually good to see when things go wrong. A lot of my stuff goes wrong. That's what being an artist is about. It's about trying different things. Doesn't always work. And, I do believe it's important to keep it real and show that. So, I'm grateful to those of you that kind of actually said you appreciated seeing it. So, right, without further ado, let's get on. Okay, so now in editing mode. I started by having a good old rummage through this folder that I thought was mainly kind of product tags. As it turned out, the bits and pieces of other things there, including that, I think that was an altered business card, and if I can find a video that I made that in, I'll link it below. I think it was in one of my junk use it or lose it series. So I'm having a look through here, and there's a couple of things just coming to my attention. That's from an old checkbook, for example. A lot of these things that I pull out, I don't use in the end, but this is just me kind of going through this. I did think about deleting this from the actual video, editing it out, but this is an important part of my creative process, and I know some of you enjoy just seeing the process of the kind of decision making. So I'm looking at the piece of caddy paper and I'm feeling that I probably want to use it today rather than product tags. As I say, working intuitively, not quite sure where this is going to go. Now, obviously there's bits and pieces cut out of this. This is a scrap piece, so I'm just looking at kind of trying to even it up a bit. Now, one of the things I like about caddy paper is it has a bit of a rough edge. Here we go again, forgetting words. Rough edge to it. It's not a nice, neatly cut edge. And this is the best way that I've found to actually try and recreate that edge. It's just to use a ruler with some water, a paintbrush, fold it up roughly, but then just tear it and not looking to make a straight edge. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking it's running a little bit off in places, so just using that craft mat underneath to try and judge if it is or isn't running off. And I do make just a few more tears to this just to try and even it up a little bit. So you'll see that is roughly, it's 16 centimetres, which is just over 6¼ inches by just over 8½, which is about 21½ centimetres. I am looking at it again. I do want to take that other edge up the top there that was just looking a little bit too straight for me, and Yeah, looking at that, it's bothering me a little. I just want to take it off a bit, but you know, I'm only taking off, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch, 2 to 3 millimeters probably max. And I just use the same process to take that off. So now that I've got that done, I'm deciding which side to use, and I'm just going to take some gesso. This is a white gesso by Daler Rowney, and all I'm going to do is use one of my favourite tools just to scrape it on. Now I do know that because it's been a spray ink underneath that it was one of those that's water soluble, so it will move a little and it will start to colour the gesso just a little bit, not much at all. Now what I'm trying to do here is to put some texture into this background, so I'm not looking for this to go on smooth at all. Just trying to show you there that it was changing colour a little bit. And you'll see that because the ink is water soluble, you know, it's also starting to kind of rise up through the gesso a little bit. Now obviously if I wanted to get rid of it completely, I would do several layers of the gesso, but I actually like the look of that as is, and I'm going to work with it as is. Now what I'll do is I'll take the heat tool just to start the drying process off, but just going to show you here that where the gesso is thick, it will remain soft for a little while. So if I was working on a big piece of art for something, you know, perhaps for an exhibition or something, I might let it dry completely. But for this, because it's a project I want to get done today, I'm just going to work with it even though it's still a little bit soft. So here I am, I've pulled out that butterfly recycled business card again. There was something about the colour of that that was drawing me today. As I say, working intuitively, so I'm just kind of being guided by what I really feel that I want to kind of work with at this point in time. There was something about the colour of that. So I'm now looking for other things that might go well with it. I liked that piece of just plain kind of thick packaging material. I pulled out a couple of the images that I've been working with recently. I think that was maybe an ATC I started and didn't finish. So just working my way through my scraps. Now again, I thought, should I be leaving this in? But for me, it's very much an important part of the creative process. Going back to the image transfers from last week and thinking, could I use a bit of that? Because like many of you, I actually liked the kind of ghost effect that I got on one of the sets of eyes that I used. So here I'm looking at pieces that have that kind of, I think it's a crimson colour on it, wondering if I need to introduce something like that, something that's just going to give that pop. So I play about with these for a few minutes, and you'll see in a moment or two that I actually kind of end up discarding those. So just going to leave you just for literally a minute or so while I just work my way through this. So at this point I realise that I'm not keen to cover up as much as the background, and I'm feeling drawn to just creating something almost down the centre of the piece. So I take out some of those pieces that I was working with and really just start to build something here. Just looking at the pieces, looking at the marks on some of the individual pieces and feeling my way through how these might be incorporated. As I lay the pieces down, almost one on top of the other, it feels like I'm starting to build some sort of structure, be it a cross, be it a totem. It's difficult to see. At this point, I'm feeling that this moth, which was stamped a long time ago, I think the moth is actually a paper artsy stamp. If I can find the exact stamp, then I'll tell you the name of it in the description box below, or the set that it came from. But it just felt too neat around the edge, and I felt that this needed to be a little rougher around the edges. And again, this is just the way I kind of work. I like torn edges rather than a lot of rounded edges. Looking at this, and this, as I say, I think this was an ATC I was creating at some point but didn't finish, and I think it's possibly the Knots and Crosses stencil from PM Artist Studio. It is definitely PM Artist Studio. I'll leave a link to them below. And I just wanted one little piece from it. So again, it was about the mark that was on there. And, you know, as I've said before, if you have stencils or you have stamps, you know, you don't have to use the piece in its entirety. Look at the marks that are made and pick those out. That's just a way that I work, and it's often little marks that will jump out to me. So I'm looking at that again and just feeling it's still not quite right, so I'm going to rough it up a little bit more. I've got a piece of sandpaper. Now I'm careful with this. I've got the windows open, so you know it shouldn't be too dusty, and I do clear the dust away afterwards. So going around the edges, but also over the top of it. I do like things grungy. I say this time after time. I do like them grungy. It's just my preferred way of working. Taking some of the back off, because I know that if I'm going to glue this down, you know, keeping in mind that there was a business card in the middle of this. It's had paper on the front and paper on the back, so it is quite thick. So just taking some of the back off as well, because obviously that's not going to be seen. So as I say, building this up. And at the moment I've got 4 pieces down there. Like many people, my preference is for an odd number of pieces. So looking at it, I'm wondering about putting something either side of the moth as well, you know, so extending it in terms of, is it a cross? And looking at this piece of paper and decide to bring this in. I had been thinking about introducing a word at that point and making it the 5th element, but instead I just bring in another piece of paper, and I feel it gives it a bit of balance anyway, not least because it's slightly darker than the black and white piece that was there. So I'm going to use this matte medium. This is by Winsor & Newton. Usually I would use the gel matte medium, but I'm running very low on that. So using this, and I'm just going to glue these pieces into place. So again, I'll leave you just for a brief minute or so and be back. Okay, so that's those pieces more or less in place, just showing you there that the gesso is still slightly soft, but liking the way that the background is still showing through a bit. Now, I do go on to change that a bit, and for me, it's interesting looking back and seeing how it actually looked at this stage. So I'm now going to use these Faber-Castell soft pastels, and I was looking here for the colour chart because I'm going to try and tell you the colours that I was using, but I couldn't find it. I forget that I think it's actually on the back of the box. But you'll see here that I have some definite favourite colours. So this one is, it's not black, but oh gosh, a charcoal it is. And you know, I would use this where others might sometimes, or where I might sometimes use a black ink pad, just to start to bring a bit of definition to the full piece. And you can see the ones that I use the most in there, and those that I hardly ever touch. So at the moment I'm just sitting contemplating what colours I want to use. Here I go again, I'm looking for the colour chart. There's a colour chart there, but of course not all those colours are in this box, so I'm kind of looking and thinking, which one is it? So anyway, I put it to the side. So it is a kind of dark umber brown colour. I just want to start to add in a bit of colour to it. Now, looking back, and this is where filming things can be really helpful, because I look back now and I think, have I actually ended up overcooking it? Now I do like the way that the pastel works in and over the kind of rough bits of the gesso. You know, it really highlights that, and that's why I like to leave the texture in the gesso. I am going to just dry the top of the pieces that I glued down, because I will be kind of going not necessarily over them but close to the edge of them, so I want to make sure that all the matte medium is actually dry. But there was a simplicity about the piece at this stage with the background that I liked. I may have overcooked it. I'd be interested to know what you think. I do like the way it ends up, but it's almost as if I could have created two pieces, one just as is and one with all the colour on it, then I would have been really happy. So this stage is really just about bringing in different colours. I have a tendency towards, I always want to say natural colours, but I mean neutral colours. So the kind of ochres, the browns, the grey. I even bring in a little bit of white just to knock it back at times. But again, I'm going to leave you for a few minutes while I work on this. Feel free to jump ahead if you don't want to see the detail. I'm just using my fingers to smudge it in most of the time. I use my fingers to actually kind of mix the colours just on the page. Though you'll see towards the end of doing this, I actually try and leave some bits that are just kind of picking up the detail of the gesso. So, back in a few minutes. So I pull out some found words. I just take some pages and look for words that jump out to me. And again, I'm just going to use this matte medium to glue these down and into place. And in a moment, I'll just go round them with this basic graphite pencil, and then we'll take a look at them. Wander under an unfamiliar sky, prayers of peace guide the light. So for me, the words brought a significance and a meaning to the actual piece that I was creating that felt like a cross, a structure, a totem, whatever. So of course, Nina will have a video this week, and I'll leave a link below. As always, thanks ever so much for watching. Do take care. Bye for now.